Hello, welcome to the Xirtus.
Synctank.
Yo, what's up? Are we calling you Linus instead? I missed that
Sure.
part. Okay, Linus is here. Linus, yeah.
Linus.
Okay.
That's a little bit more public-facing name, I suppose.
Fair enough.
That reference, is that Snoopy's line? Is that where you got that, or is that like
Well,
what your grandma called you or something?
Torval?
no, it just this name just came to me via sort of a direct message from the unknown, really.
Okay.
But it wasn't really very specifically based on anything, but it's certainly proven to be very meaningful in retrospect, I found.
Gotcha.
I'm a fan of the name Linus for a number of reasons. But it rose by any other name. Still a sweet. It's good to have you back. You were here before. I'm glad
Cheers,
that you're
thank
here
you.
now.
Good to
And,
be here.
Paranoid American. I know you're like, it's a balancing act for you now on Tuesdays because of the time zones.
I'm at
and-
work right now, technically.
technically speaking, but like that's cool, that's awesome. And David, I'm also glad you're here too. Let me just really quickly heads up people, the other day I woke up and chose theological violence, and I created this group. There's like this sort of ex-church dialogue thing that we're doing right here, where I've just kind of taken everyone who thinks that everyone else isn't a Christian but they're the only ones, and put them all together into a room, and the walls get smaller and smaller as they have to fight for their God against each other's God, kind of a thing. But they all think
Right.
they're Christians. It's really a lot of energy and a lot of fun for me. And I'm really sorry about that. Like, it's clearly like not a very like Christ-like thing to do, like pit people against
Actually,
each
it's the
other.
epitome of a Christ-like thing to do. It's like one of those Jubilee videos where they put one guy in the middle and then just have 20 people just like coming at him. There's
Regardless,
a guy in the middle.
it is an ex-church thing to do.
Oh, that's true. That's for sure. And anyway, if anyone wants to be a part of this like crazy conversation where like Mormons and Orthodox Christians and Protestants are like, having it out about solar
Many
Scriptura.
will enter, only one will leave.
There can only be one Islander. Do join it. Just go to the Xirtus community here and maybe like join the Xirtus community on X, I guess is the easiest way. If you go to like, you click on like the multiple faces thing here, and you can go to like Xirtus community, just like add it. And there's a lot more to the Xirtus community. It doesn't have to be like a religious thing. It's like, it's the Xirtus community. But from here, like I can get you into the ex-church dialogue, right? Which is the dialogue specifically where people are fighting about Jesus, which is funny
You know
to
what?
me
I'm
and
just
ironic.
going to say, like, as a preliminary thing, like, if you join it, especially with how many people are already on there, you're going to want to mute your notifications and just check in with it, because if you don't, your phone may not be functional. Like,
It
you
might
won't
kill
be
you.
able to use your phone because it'll be happening so frequently that you're just like, I can't even type anything into the,
Have there been any successful conversions yet? And we need to start like a tally.
Sparrow Nose is clearly baptized in the X-Church. I can
one.
tell.
We got at least one.
At least that's pretty good. And who knows what will happen in the future. But yeah, well, all right. So did you want to start with something, David? How did you want to begin? Because I know we brought in Linus here, but
How do I?
yeah, baptize me, bro. Baptize me. You know, like, what do you want?
I don't know. I've been doing what most people, or a lot of people, have probably been doing. If you use Twitter, it's like 80%, if not more, of my Twitter feed is just what's happening in LA.
Yeah,
And maybe it's because I live in California, or maybe this is just happening globally. I don't even know, but it seems to be the focus. I've been like, as just out of curiosity, you know, I lost my Facebook got deleted by Facebook for saying things that were fine to say a couple months after I said them.
Quoting Whoopi Goldberg. You can say it. You quoted Whoopi Goldberg. That's what.
Yeah, that was the final straw. Yeah, I was quoting Whoopi Goldberg. They didn't like that during COVID hysteria.
No, they did not.
But you know, but anyway, I check in, right? So I'm curious, what are they saying on Facebook? I just like the comparison is so stark. Like I look at Twitter and it's like I'm seeing footage, like I'm seeing raw footage, a lot of it of what's happening in LA. I'm like, holy cow, that just happened. You know, and then I go over to Facebook, and what I'm seeing is I'm not seeing any footage of LA. What I'm seeing is photography. And in every case, for the most part, it's like I can see how do we paint the protesters in the most positive light? Like as like freedom fighters and whatever. I'm seeing that, and then I'm seeing a shocking amount of like arguments that all the people who are setting fires or being violent, they're MAGA, okay? And we need to get their identities because MAGA has now infiltrated the peaceful LA protest and is violent because there's no other explanation. So it's got.
They think that like MAGA people are pretending to do this
that's
stuff.
All like on my feed.
Interesting.
Like my local community on Facebook. That's like what a lot of them are trying to, because they have to have an angle on it because it's a very uncomfortable thing that's happening. Like this has to be a peaceful protest, right? And if it's not a peaceful protest, it can't be our fault or the group that we're identified with.
That's wild, bro.
Much like the idea of January 6th, being like, no, wait, that must have been Antifa who were doing
right.
That.
So this is the thing, though, is that there are certain facts, like you could say negative things about January 6th, and in a lot of cases you'll be correct. And it is true that on January 6th that was an infiltrated crowd, and we know who a lot of those agents were, the provocateurs who really pushed in a certain direction. Like, and this happened in 2022. Speaking of, you know, the lockdown time, and you know, all it takes is one person to throw a brick and it gives the police an excuse to attack. This is why
it takes a corporation to have a pallet of bricks ready to go, you know.
Thank you. Or whatever it is. So like this is why.
Or a rock, right? Like that was the Santa Cruz Urban Outfitters thing where like they picked up rocks, and I was like, where the hell did you get a rock in downtown Pacific Avenue? You had to bring your own rock. Like that's
BYOR. Yeah. So if I see a protesting crowd, I have to say, and this is very like, the people can look down on me for this, but I go the other way. And I go the other way for one specific reason. Protests aren't what they used to be. And if I'm participating and holding the line in a protest that I believe in, all it takes is one provocateur to throw that soup can, and now we're getting tear gassed and rubber bullets and all the rest of it. And honestly, like I feel like I can get further. Like at least like I have an outlet here that's almost like a therapy. Like I can speak my mind. Some people will agree, some people will disagree, but at least I'm going to get further with this than I am holding a sign in the street with the possibility of, you know, not being understood by the authorities, you know, and them, you know, getting, you know, I don't know, but
it is interesting. Like they keep bringing up this idea, like, I mean, because everyone's like, well, hey, you guys had January 6th. I'm like, yeah, but you know what, you get one, you know, because if January 6th happened one time, and granted, it's kind of like most of the people of January 6th were like old ladies on Facebook who had like a QAnon like group chat or something like that.
The worst kind.
The worst offenders. But you know, it's the ones who wore all black and no Trump hats that were breaking things down that seemed like to be the biggest trouble, or like the 6'6" guy. The 6'6" guy who was, you know, wearing the Trump hat that everyone was yelling at the time. Fed. Like we knew there was clearly like feds.
You know what it is? I almost see them as like the jokers in the deck. Like everyone sits down at the table if you're playing with the jokers, and you all just like universally agree, hey, whenever I play this hand, I get to use a joker, and that gets to like help me fulfill my goal, and then I'll let you do that too. Like we'll both allow each other to use the Joker cards. That's sort of what like these agent provocateurs are. Like, because if you say, hey, wait a minute, that's not a full house, that's not a straight flush, and it's like, oh, like, am I not allowed to use my Joker card? Well, then you can't use your Joker card in the next game we play. So like there's this universal like agreement that we're both like both sides are allowed to use agent provocateurs as long as it doesn't go past a certain line, I guess.
But it does go past the line, and that's the thing that I remember, like, 'cause I was in Minnesota during the George Floyd protest, like 20 minutes away from at least 4 of them, you know, because they weren't just like one or another. They were just continued. This was during COVID too, so it was like they go like it's kind of like they go from you have to get vaccinated and wear a mask and stay inside to all right, just double bag it, get outside and start breaking windows, everybody. It's totally fine. It didn't really matter what was going on in one of their narratives, so long as it didn't, you know, it's okay if it conflicts with another narrative. Just like pick a narrative of the du jour, like whatever we want to say. However, having one January 6th and then having a dozen of these other riots where these are violent riots where people are getting hurt. There's violence against not just property, which we can get into in a second, why the Waymo vehicles are being sabotaged. Because if you blow up a bunch of cars and they're all self-driving cars from the same company, that seems like a sponsorship deal, doesn't it? Like, isn't that kind of that doesn't really feel like as earnest as you want it to. And then to say, okay, well, this protest was, well, I mean, for the love of God, because if it's a protest where a bunch of people are getting hurt, physically hurt all the time, that's still really different than a couple dudes standing around inside of the White House or wherever the heck that they did. And I'm not saying that's a good thing either. Clearly, you know, I think everyone agrees like January 6th was a bad deal from the get-go. Like most people I know were like, hey, don't go there. Like, I mean,
well, actually, speaking of that, like, so you guys, I didn't make it because I was at work and I got invited to interview the QAnon shaman guy, like the
God
horns, right?
What a delight that red strike on our channel was, yeah.
Right. But the thing is that it is true that man on that day, like I had to stand reflected on some of this because I wasn't on Twitter on January 6th during that time, you know, and I thought certain things about it because I was, you know, I was being told what I was being told. I didn't know until later that Trump had tweeted. It was removed within like 2 minutes when he told everyone to go home. That guy who you interviewed stood there with a loudspeaker, basically telling the crowd, reading the tweet and the transcript of what Trump had said and saying, yeah, I know you don't like this, but he's telling you that it's done. Peaceful, we're to go home. Like, and that's what he said. And I'm not seeing anybody right now. I'm not seeing Newsom. I'm not seeing Karen Bass. I'm not seeing any of our representatives telling anybody to go home. That's protesting. They're saying a lot of stuff, but they're not saying that one thing that Trump did actually say that I was forced to stand reflected on. I did not know that he said that at that time and that Twitter removed it within 2 minutes.
Yeah, I remember it because I was like cut up deep into Twitter at the time. So I think
who removed it? Was it Trump himself or was it
was in the Twitter files? I believe it shows that it was Twitter made the call to remove this.
Yeah, Twitter removed it.
Go home.
Twitter removed it. Yeah,
yes, they removed and so most people don't even know that he said that. Like, it's that's one of those.
And
things.
Twitter ended up taking down his account, which is like, okay, so now you're censoring the president of the United States during a violent riot where a bunch of people are, you know, maybe they aren't in the army. I mean, unfortunately, maybe a lot of them were, but the ones who weren't, you would think, hey, there's a commander in chief of your group, actually both the army and the commander in chief of your, you know, ideology and of your army. Both. He's telling you to step down. You take away you cut the head off of the chicken. You make it impossible. Cut the head off of the cockroach would probably be better, right? Because it keeps running around.
You tried to get the National Guard in there. Pelosi and company was like, that is true. Like, it's funny because these things are things that people have said, you know, because what did you have to say?
Will said I would pay more attention to what Alex Jones' testimony on that day. And there, you know, Alex was there too. I knew a lot of people that were there. I specifically wasn't. Just want to point that out. A lot of people assume I was, and I have video evidence because I live streamed myself at Princeton because I wanted to make sure that I was as far away as I could reasonably be. So I just like kept the stream going like as far away, and then YouTube still blackballed me and like ruined my reach for subscribers. The shame on you.
From Canada, sitting there from Canada, you know, we just look like a bunch of retards. I can say that word now because there was an executive order that says I can say retard now if it's to friends and jokingly.
It's funny for me because like my enduring, it's amazing. All these years later, I still feel so upside down on what I feel is my common sense take on it is rare or something. Just like all these ideas, like getting back to the idea that, you know, Trump was saying stop. Like, of course, Trump was saying stop. He didn't want that proceeding interrupted, you know, like this was, because to me, sorry, to address your question, to phrase it in the form of an answer to the question you asked, I was sitting here, I was like, this is going to be great. I was looking forward to, like, I'm going to sit and watch these hearings. This is going to be great. Finally, we've had all this argument ever since November, ever since Election Day. We've had all this argument about various election grievances, and the arguments are not allowed to happen here, and then the arguments are not allowed to happen there. You know, they get deplatformed off social media. They get dismissed out of the courts before evidence is heard. But finally, you know, now it's finally going to be the congressional hearing where whatever happens at the end of the day, and obviously there's like a 0 or 0.01% chance that the challenges will prevail, you know, like they're not actually going to vote to send the electors back and but at least they're going to get their day. You know, they haven't gotten their day on social media or their day in court yet, but the election fraud case is at least going to get its day in Congress. It's going to be the grand airing of grievances, right? They're going to get to stand up and say, like, here's the problem. Here's why it has to go back. Here's why we have to send the things back. And you can vote this motion down, but we at least read it all into the congressional record, right?
But it's not Murdoch's mystery. It's more like kids in the hall. I'm just using Canadian terminology so you can understand me. But it's not like, hey, we're going to get the information that we're looking for delivered to us. This is America, you know? So it's not going to be some logical, piecemeal, sustained data that we were getting. Instead, it's going to be this like a horrible show trial created by people that have a narrative it's like an American reality show, right?
Right. Well, on January 6th, somewhere in Florida, votes were still being counted. Let's just be clear about that.
So, you know, I was watching with interest to see, you know, because there was a wide variety of grievances, and some were very valid and some were a lot less valid, you know, like there was a whole lot of this, like, hey, I heard a rumor that signals were going overseas and blah, 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 blah. But then on the one hand, and then on the other hand, there's like, the Constitution makes it really clear who gets to make election rules, and then that wasn't followed. You know, so there were good arguments and bad arguments, and there had been a sort of a behind-the-scenes argument over those months about which arguments do we foreground. And I was happy to see on the morning of January 6th that it seemed like the more sensible constitutional arguments were being presented rather than the like, you know, kind of sci-fi Dominion stuff. Like less about the counting and more about the rules that were imposed at the last minute. And so anyway, I was just watching the proceedings. You know, people are offering arguments, and then some of the responses were coming back basically saying like, well, that can't be, or that doesn't matter because it's so improper for you to raise any challenge at all. And, you know, that's tedious or whatever, but I'm like just curious to see what's happening. And I was just watching C-SPAN, right? And then they were like, wait, something's happening. The procedure is being interrupted. Okay, they're filing out of the chamber. We might come back to this. And then it just was some like silent footage of just like a camera of that lobby where people were like filing in peacefully. Right. I did zero, like, I'm going to check around and see what else is happening. I was just like, okay, hopefully we're going to get this back going soon. I didn't know about the riots and chaos. I only saw the orderly thing. And I was just sitting there like, I was enjoying the debate. What is right. It seemed like everyone else was like, in retrospect, a lot of people have kind of talked about how January 6th was like the funniest day in American politics or something like that. Like whatever happened, whatever you think about it, that was a really fun time watching the news, right? But me, it was the opposite. I'm like, get back to the debate.
Yeah. Major distraction thing.
So I felt like I was on the Trump position because, of course, like that was like Trump, all his arguments got deplatformed off social media and dismissed out of the courts. And this was his one chance to like, no, I got C-SPAN. I get at least my couple of hours here to present my case, and then you can vote me out and whatever. But he didn't
instead
even
of like,
get
let
that.
me ask you one question. Why do you hate America, Mr. Trump? And then just cut him off. That was
yeah.
There was, as far as media outlets are concerned, C-SPAN was one of the last mainstream media outlets to get basically compromised. So like for a long time, C-SPAN was very straightforward. They didn't have those kind of influences, and at a certain point, it did too. So not completely, but it's just that was like our last most straightforward news source. And oh well.
Dude, the Korean rooftop kids, really quickly, like what did the rooftop Koreans do on the 33rd anniversary of the 92 Los Angeles riots? Train the next generation of men in mind, body, and spirit, right? So I think that's the major thing, is that these riots that are going on right now, there's just kind of this like anniversarial feeling about this, something that always happens in Los Angeles. I've seen numbers of pictures 92. Of watch riots. Someone was showing a picture of, or was it the Marines and everything coming to California, and like, this is unprecedented. There's never been there has. Like, remember the PCP, I'm sorry, that's how I remember it. Rodney King, there you go. I was trying to say Rodney King riots, they called the Marines into California. So this idea that this has never happened before or something like that, it's just, to me, I really don't want to make this that everything's a psyop all the time, because that gets tiresome. But what was going on this week? Let's see. Ukraine peace talks, they were supposed to happen with Russia in the Vatican. They refused to do that. So instead they do it in Istanbul. Istanbul being where they actually originally, the Catholic Church or the Holy See or everything originally started, right? The schism between the Orthodox and the Catholics happened in Istanbul, which is the Tartaria connection, which is the thing that Russia respects. Whether or not Americans get Tartaria or they want to talk about it, Russia does, and they teach it to their kids in school. And they're blowing up drones trying to kill Vladimir Putin in his helicopter, which he can fly himself and was apparently. And then he ends up getting his, the major U.S. assisted drone technology strike using open source software by like the Real Genius Val Kilmer movie kind of kids from Cabrillo College, like any of the community colleges who wrote the drone software that ended up being used to destroy all these Russian planes. And then there's this quiet before the storm. And we're wondering, like, well, how is Russia going to respond? They got to airstrike and destroy Kiev now, right? They don't want to, but they got to kind of a vibe. And then the next day is boom, bang, California is under attack. Right. Setting up, which is, because I'm supposed to be, arrest Gavin Newsom, right? Like, there's some people that are going to say, hey, we should go violently oppose the federal government. Right. And there's other people that are supposed to be, well, we have to arrest the governor of a state.
Let's be clear. That video of them, like when they asked, so the media, whoever was, I don't know who he was from, where he was from, but he says to Trump, he goes, should we arrest him? And you could see Trump was like, he didn't even want to deal with the media, but he was like, that totally piqued his interest. And he's like, and he walks up and he's like, yeah, actually, maybe we should. He's like, I like Gavin, he's a nice guy, but he's been very incompetent.
And a naughty boy. He's a naughty boy. Yeah. And sorry, this is the wrong one there. But confiscation acts, right? Confiscation acts of the Civil War, 1861, 1862, which allowed the Union forces to seize property, including slaves, right? So people don't like to think about this because this was used to actually take slaves. And we still have this in the United States. You can definitely, corporations aren't supposed to own people. They have works around. But the main idea is that if you get arrested, they can make you work. They can force you to do whatever. So the United States government has a monopoly on violence and on slavery, right? And so they can just seize whoever they want, and they can seize whatever property they want. But the Confiscation Act was designed to take over any property from any treasonous states or any government of any state that is treasonous to the federal government. Do I like this? No, not really. I think the whole idea of Lincoln arresting people for voting against him under the charge of polluting the ballot boxes, which is exactly how Abraham Lincoln arrested people, by the way, who voted against him. Polluting is pollution to vote against him. So, I never really liked Lincoln for that to begin with, but this is telling me that that's what we're like. It's like, do it again so I can spank you. That's how I feel about this whole California thing. And I know that's exactly how the Antifa or how the Democrats are framing it. But there's a part of me that sees that, because the more that the Californians kind of insinuate this force against the federal government, the more they're setting precedent for the federal government to become more authoritarian. So, I mean, that doesn't have to happen, but their escalation of it makes me wonder, like, could they possibly be so stupid as to not see how that works? Don't they have lawyers that tell them how this works? Like, how could they not be trying to build this dictatorship more power?
Yeah. Oh, you're muted?
That's the whole concept of the
Gustave
Le Bon's The Crowd, right? Is that when you get people into a big enough mass, then they're no longer thinking for themselves. They're repeating like whatever the figurehead says. And I feel like the formula is really simple. It's that someone crafts some very radical rhetoric that, like, right now we're kind of seeing actions reflect the rhetoric. The rhetoric was extreme way before the actions were extreme. So the rhetoric gets elevated first to like an extreme standard where normal people are like, wait, are they really calling for what I think they're calling for? And then you have celebrity endorsement, and then you have politicians endorsing the celebrities without endorsing the exact things that the celebrities have been endorsing in the form of like tweets and Twitter. But those three things are like the holy trifecta. The rhetoric gets elevated, a celebrity co-signs the rhetoric, and then a politician is seen with that celebrity as opposed to condemning them. And it's so easy in the monkey brain to be like, oh, that means that it's okay to do these things. They're telling me to do these things.
Right. And Canada has entered the chat. And this, what you just said was kind of reminding me of people. There's a just sudden debate now if this is actually from Schopenhauer. Whatever the case, the three stages of truth, that at first it's ridiculed, then it's violently opposed, and then it's accepted as self-evident. And it has to do with cognitive dissonance. So something comes forward and we all laugh at it. Canadian Bacon, the South Park movie, like what Canada has traditionally been and the way that we as Americans have related to Canada has dramatically shifted in the last 5 years, especially, right? To the point where the trucker protest and the them with their bank accounts and all this kind of like, I never would have, it wasn't on my bingo card that Canada could turn into kind of a authoritarian rule. Like, I don't think it's the Great White North. Everyone seems really cool and nice and friendly. And
I mean, I think of
Leonard
only
Cohen
5 times a day, and I bow to the East because of Canada. So I think that, you know,
right.
I was thinking it. I'll be honest. You know,
right. Like we've been coasting for 50 years on our reputation of like, sure, we'll take your draft dodger refugees. You know.
Yeah, exactly. And that was the thing, is that during the Vietnam War, like people were getting like, here's the route to escape to Canada, and Canada's always been associated as this safe haven from if we get too totalitarian, right? And now, like, you're looking at so now we have people waving Mexican flags like all over LA right now. Like East LA is largely Hispanic. It's got, you know, really good Mexican food and Mexican culture and everything. But it's like this whole thing, like, I mean, I'm kind of.
It's pretty funny to be like, we want to send you back to Mexico, so you wave the Mexican flag. It's like, what are you even doing there? But okay, all right, you know.
Well, now they're passing out American flags because the optics they realize is really bad, because this is a funded deal. This could be the first time. I don't know. Maybe this is just me being optimistic, but I know that these psyops that are in portion of them are psyops for certain, right? So you know that they're passing out masks right now in big boxes. So like trucks are coming through, not like just regular face masks, but like armor masks, right? Which cost about $60 each. And they're distributing them to the crowds. And who's paying for this? And the American flag. So there wasn't American flags initially. There was just Mexican flags. So now they're passing out the American flags to be like America and Mexico. Like, because it's just, there's somebody paying attention to the optics of this and wanting the protest to be substantiated. It almost reminds me of what the DNC did in the first place with Donald Trump, where you want to substantiate this candidate so that you can do what you want with him. Like, they wanted him to be a viable candidate. It's in the WikiLeaks from John Podesta outlining the 2016 strategy for Hillary Clinton, that they're going to prop this man up so that they can make fun of him, so that they can use him to make themselves look better. The same kind of thing is happening with this situation here, where there's definitely overseers and there's organizations that are putting money and strategizing this. Craigslist ads looking for the strongest most intense people they can. They can't be military. They say in the Craigslist ad, we can't have military people. They don't tell you why. It takes 2 seconds to realize you can't put military people in there paying them as much as they're paying them, as much as they say they're going to pay them, because they're going to side with the military when the military gets sent in. Once you put in National Guard, they're going to be like, well, military people will side with military people. So they need, yeah.
And it's illegal to be a crisis actor for the, and also be following your rules. Hey, I think I see a crypto. Are you jumping in there? Or one of these just 2 cryptos? Oh, there he is. Okay. Double your money, double your pleasure. What's up, Alex? How's it going?
Hey,
You're
fine.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm actually a little rattled. I want to tell you. I want to come talk to my friends here because I'm being kind of digitally assaulted right now and hacked.
Right.
Getting multiple yesterday, got multiple phone calls that you shouldn't answer your phone. That's what everybody knows. But for some reason, I keep answering it and talking to these people. They fuck with my head. And nothing really catastrophic has happened, but they did get into my cryptocurrency accounts trying to get stuff, which there's nothing there. Joke's on them. Ha ha, I'm broke. But it's just a little unsettling, the ease with which this can happen. So I just wanted to come in here and say hi, guys. What's going on?
Yeah, brutal. What's
Wow.
what's up with
Dude.
I
that?
never really had this degree, and I'm a little bit paranoid because I guess I'll just reveal this here. I just recorded an interview for the Higher Side Chat with Greg Carlwood.
Oh,
And
wow.
I'm going to be a guest on there in a couple. That's going to air in a week or so. And I'm just like, is that related or is it just coincidence because my OPSEC is just horrendously bad and I'm just getting more followers, or what's going on? Am I being actually targeted for some reason, or is it just me continuing to answer the phone like a fucking idiot?
Yeah, don't answer
Anyway,
your phone ever.
Don't answer the phone.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Uh,
But yeah, that's the timing of. Sorry, yeah, that's a eerie, coincidence at least if this is happening coincidentally with leveling up your visibility or reach. That's it's hard to ignore that,
especially with the type of what it is that you're putting out there. Like you're published in that big magazine about crypto, right? Like you have a bit in there. Oh, are you muted or?
Alex.
Yeah.
what's that?
Oh, okay, now we can hear you. It looked like you were
Yeah.
speaking, but we couldn't hear you. Yeah.
Oh, I'm just going to stop. I'm driving for some reason. I'm nervous driving. I probably shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would walk instead of drive. Well, filming probably is easier. But I want to say also with the Mexican flag thing, I've been seeing that they're selling Mexican flags downtown in LA for $20 a flag. So I mean, there's a lot of rackets every direction it goes. But
Yeah. Yeah, and also with the timing with all this crazy fucking, just everything that you're already talking about, the riots, and coming up on Trump's 79th birthday, which I made a tweet that I wanted to get boosted because it's kind of insane, relating his birthday upcoming to the birth of Adolf Hitler. It's exactly 1776 times 4 weeks from that span. Hitler's birth to Trump's 79th birthday, which is actually 230 times 4 months. So there's this weird parallel there. And so it's just really, it feels like things are building up to that. And I'm a little bit like, whoa, what's going to happen? Serious crackdown, serious martial law, that kind of,
Right.
Yeah. Well, it feels like a setup. It feels like a setup, even just the nature of, and this makes sense. Like I was starting this just saying that when you look at Facebook and you see, and I see these people arguing that this is all MAGA infiltrated, I could see why they would say that, because they're playing right into the reason to do the thing they're saying Trump is going to be this authoritarian and all this stuff, like whatever, the insurrection stuff. And then they're doing the thing that would be the only excuse you could give him to do the thing that they're saying he's going to do. Like,
Right.
it's like, why are you hitting yourself? You know, like, ugh.
Yeah, and it's also, you know, Trump, like, part of the whole selling point of the return of Trump was like, you see what happens for 4 years with these people who don't respect freedoms or the Constitution. We got to bring Trump back in because he at least is going to respect the Constitution and the law, right?
Right.
And then, but then as soon as he comes back in, then there's this sort of thing of like, we're deporting people for speech crimes now. And so a lot of Trump fans are getting a little like, oh, wait, I thought we were going to be constitutional. So then it's like, so then the current situation in California is reminding people that like, hey, yeah, maybe you don't like, you know, deporting people for speech crimes, but you're not this kind of anti-deportation people, right? You definitely don't identify with them, right? It's kind of like sort of herding people back onto Trump's camp, even if they are newly nervous about his attitude.
Totally. Archie said, Matt gives 5 memberships. Everyone get them while you can. That's pretty awesome. Thank you very much.
And they're gone.
Yeah, they're gone. You missed it. I wanted to quickly say, because, you know, it's funny, like what you just said, Linus, that, you know, as a Californian myself, if this was reversed and I was 16 or something, I could totally imagine myself, like, if Obama had tried to oppress, you know, Californians at some point, I think I might have been on the other side of this. Like, and so there's like a political thing that's flipped around that's changed everything, where I used to say, hey, California is a republic. Texas is a republic. Sure, we're part of this like screwed up economic fascist trade union, this federalist government that's been created, the same as Europe's part of this union, you know, but we should have our own government, our own superior courts, and we shouldn't have to follow the Constitution of the United States. Who the hell are they to tell us what we're supposed to believe in? And then now it's flipped around where I'm like, hey, please, for the love of God, like Crystal knocked us, you know, and that's not the way I should feel. But you look at the California Republic, for context, what California, because everyone's like, why is it that Mexicans are trying to be in the United States? Or no, California, this is California. You might think like, you know, like this is like that. Hold on, let me like make it even smaller. You might think this is California because you don't know any better. But no. California is a freaking crazy big ideological idea. And it was at one point this giant thing. This is still California. Like you go down to Baja California, you know, that's like South Korea. And then North California is like North Korea. That's the best way to tell you this, because we're part of this crazy dictatorship and they're part of that crazy dictatorship. But that doesn't mean that we're not all California. And, you know, look even further, talk about James Polk in 1840s and the invasion of America into Texas and into the United States. Texas was part of Mexico. So it's a lot more convoluted than you even realize when you're saying, hey, Mexicans, stay out of Texas and California. What? Like, why? How do you even have the audacity? So I can totally see why people are saying, hey, you don't have the right to tell people from California, South California or East California, that they're not allowed into like Baja or they're not into North. Really, California is California. But the convoluted problem here is, does that mean that Californians can go to other countries? Like, should a Baja Californian be allowed into Colorado? And should a Northern Californian be allowed into Monterrey and the other parts of Mexico? Because, I mean, yeah, this is a conquered California Republic is torn up, shredded up, and turned into multiple states, multiple fragmented nations have kidnapped them. I mean, I get where they're coming from. Sorry, Alex is back.
That's right.
Some of it's Cartels, some of it's Project Monarch. It's kind of like a mix between the two.
I always thought that those are very related ideas.
This is unrelated to that, speaking of things, but there is something else I want to mention about Trump right now, and which is that today, 4 days before his 79th birthday, is exactly how old David Lynch was when he died earlier in the year.
Oh, right.
Oh, interesting.
Okay.
And the whole burning of the Los Angeles, and now here we are at the same point in Trump's life, and it's sort of like LA is burning again,
right?
Which is it's not burning really, but like
LA is kind of perpetually on fire, you know, sequentially, like it just, you know,
yeah, because it's where the fallen angels. It's like the fallen angels are at ever since that ritual, you know.
Oh, you're speaking, but I can't hear you.
Yeah, Alex you keep getting muted or something.
Yeah, I think it's because you're driving and like your signal's kind of weak or
I'm
something.
I'm not moving. So
Oh, you're not moving. Okay.
Oh.
So-
Oh yeah, the audio keeps cutting out. I didn't hear any of the last
guys-
sentence there.
Oh shoot.
All right, take two.
Okay, we
Take
did
three.
get a request in the comments, just so you know, to change the topic. We're not on the point of synchronicity necessarily, and the show is called Synctank, and we're talking politics that
Right.
people can hear in almost anywhere. But I do think that all of our opinions have value on this topic. I wanted to say that a couple days ago we had a great podcast on speaking largely on the Golden Bough and John Dee, and I realized after the show that it's kind of funny that I can't remember us ever even maybe once like bringing up Donald Trump, because speaking to the Golden Bough, like he represents something. He is like that archetypal fool or some, you know, perversion of what that archetype once was, and like the amount of symbolism that plays into that, like as like a modern anthropological expression of the thing. Like it's part of Thomas in my comic book, like that he is very relevant, and I actually was kind of refreshing that we didn't have to go there. So it's almost like we're like, I feel like I'm like compensating right now with how that we didn't go into him at all, and now like there's kind of like this show kicks in with like a focus on that, because it is all really relevant. Like everything that's playing out right now that we're talking about with the riots and all of this, like it really does speak to this kind of demand from the public to have this thing that we once had, where the last was made first and the first was made last. Now it translates to people as these systems that we have that we didn't used to have in the same way, communism, whatever. Like what was why were the hippies so disliked in like a lot most of America in the 1960s, was because they represented communism in people's mind. That's what communes were to people. That's why they were afraid of them. They're like, they want communism. But what it was for the people in the rural areas, the hippies in the rural areas, was literally like, we just want to live off the land. We want to live off the grid. Now that's same thing. Like the way that we treat that is very much like you're like a crazy to want to do that, to not be reliant upon the grid, right? You want to have chickens and whatever, like it's like, you know, or the preppers, right? But it's like that's what hippies were. And if you're a San Francisco hippie, look at the gulf of distinction between a San Francisco hippie and a hippie who's just like, I want to live off the land and not have to participate in this whole system. Because when they're looking at the Vietnam War and the draft and all this stuff, they're like, hey, I just want to live a simple life. Like, do I have to go across the world and kill for people's greed, like for a proxy war with Russia? Like, I don't really want that. So I don't know. It's just putting that out there. That there's
I would say there's like a lot of syncs here. Like the reason, you know, it's like this isn't the first time that Nero has played his fiddle, which is the title of the show, by the way. And we looked already at Gavin, you know, playing fiddle to the fires of the Palisades, which is connected to the, you know, the burning of all of the evidence inside of the P. Diddy trial, because he has all this recordings of all these celebrities doing all this stuff in his mansion, which went up in the fire right at that time. And I think we got to look at it the same way, that this is maybe about removing information, or maybe this is about setting some sort of a tone or a precedent. So going into whether this is predictive programming or a psyop, or whether there's some actual, you know, is this just the meta synchronicity that this fat cat narcissist is watching as people suffer and their homes are lost and their businesses are destroyed because he doesn't care about them? I mean, that was the thing with Nero. They wondered, did he do this? Did he burn the fire on purpose? Because afterwards, obviously, the fire benefited Nero. I mean, he built his palace where people used to live. But the fact is, it doesn't really matter, does it? It doesn't matter whether Nero did the fire or not, because he used the fire a certain way. He didn't help the people. He used it to help himself.
It's like the Patriot Act with 9/11, right? It's like, well, whatever you think happened, whoever's responsible, look at the opportunism, you know.
Yeah.
And that's true about Trump too with Palantir. Let's be honest. Like all these people that are saying that we should use Palantir because they're like, we don't have enough information on these illegal immigrants, right? I mean, but you know, Palantir says we do actually have a lot of information on these illegal, and they all have cell phones. We could just let me know when I can go. I mean, what do you think Palantir's doing? And then once they say that, they're saying, hey, we're just going to use this on illegals. Right, we're gonna, and this is how this protest start. It was that we're just going to use this to take care of serial killers and child predators and human traffickers, and now they're arresting people at Home Depot. That's Karen Bass, the mayor of LA. That's her point that she's making.
I don't know how these people are like cartoon characters, man. Like I can't even process like how she has a job after being out of the country not like when the fires happened before.
She visited Cuba 9 times before it was legal for Americans to do it.
Her background, like the group that she worked with, like way back when, is like this was their job. This was their focus, was like how to instigate riots, like for like as a beyond a form of activism. Like that's her background. Like it's just crazy. It's like it feels it's too much, man.
And yeah, it's like it used to be this sort of a fireable offense or a resignable offense, or like that would be your great sacrifice as a politician, and the solid that you do for your gang is that you take the fall for this terrible negligence. But these days you don't even have to take the fall. People just vent about it and no one loses their job.
You know, in the Christopher Nolan Batman with Heath Ledger, where, and it was true in the next one too with the Bane and whatever, where they have that line where you can't quite tell at times, wait, who is the good guy? Like, what is Batman? Like, he's obviously like, who is he working for?
He's a
like,
rich trust fundy. What do you mean, good guy, bad guy?
Yeah, it gets to this point that the way that it's presented, I have to question. You're like, wait, is the Joker actually more the good guy? Like, who's the lesser of the evils here? And when I look at Karen Bass, who has that Joker smile, and I look at American Psycho Gavin Newsom, you know what I mean? Like, is he like, who is even like? Do you know what I mean? Like these are archetypal characters in living color. Like I don't even know how they still have jobs. Like that's why the weird thing with, do you think that Gavin Newsom should be arrested? It's exactly. This goes beyond like
they still have jobs because they're playing that role well, and that's the role, that's their real job or something. Like whether it's their true, whether it's explicitly assigned by their real employers, or whether just in a kind of a collective psychological archetypal sense that's what we need or something like that. So that's their real job, is to be that sort of infuriating totem.
Yeah, and there was a point when the United States was under the control of the Bush family, the Bush administration, you could say, and I would say that included the neoliberal hegemony. I mean, Bill Clinton becoming president after one term of H.W. Bush kind of tells you who's in charge is H.W. Bush since Kennedy. That's what it was like for a long period of time. Except there's a point when the banana Republican agenda extends beyond the borders of the United States so much that they kind of, maybe it's possible with the Trump administration, there's a change of hands, a change of guard. And when that happens, you can see the CIA and the United States former government before, the Obama administration, they really solidified in California under Gavin Newsom with the help of Carrie Bass, producing these sanctuary cities for these cartels created by the W. Let's be real, like Bush created these cartels.
Right.
So there's a reason why California is the way it is, and why Bass is in charge, because they're protecting sanctuary cities which allow for people that are already committing crimes to be protected. And when you can commit a little crime and be protected, you might as well commit a big crime, right? Which is why narcotics and human trafficking and all sorts of characters emerge from these sanctuary cities, because this is the place where they're licensed, license being the Black's Law Dictionary definition of doing something you would otherwise not be permitted to do. Licensed criminals can exist, right? And they're making the most, not just money, but most influence from it. So California became the source to fight. I mean, it's the deep state epicenter. It's the Mordor of 2025, as a Californian.
Who was it? Was it somebody in Congress or whatever, when they were bringing up the amount of fentanyl that comes from Canada, through Canada, into the United States? And they were describing the weight of it. And they were like, I don't remember what it was. It was like 45 pounds or something. And like somebody in Congress was like, 45 pounds? Who cares about that? Like, because they're thinking of it like it's like Coke or something. And it's like, dude, like, and somebody has to point out to them, they're like, you realize that this little amount that you're relating this to when you hear the poundage that's coming through Canada could actually kill over 3 million Americans. You know, like, it's like, so I don't know. There's it feels related, like just this idea of like, we're not just talking about illegal immigration. We're talking about what else is coming through the border. Can we do something about it? There was this, there's all these examples. It's like when Twitter used to have, like, if you typed in certain hashtags that seem like random words, you just get a flood of child pornography. It's a fact. Like, before Elon Musk bought Twitter, and it changed within a week or two. This is somebody said, type this in. I didn't know what it was. They're like, this is effed up. This is before Elon Musk bought Twitter.
Don't type in Twitter. Sega. That was like a thing, right?
I typed it in. And I'm like, oh my god! I'm looking at I'm like, no. And I was like, that's on here. What is this? The dark web on Twitter? And like, I was informed that it had been like that for a long time. Elon Musk buys Twitter. Say what you will about Elon Musk. The fact is that within a very short amount of time, they got rid of that completely. So that was no longer an issue for the most part. I don't know if it still exists somewhere on there, but I haven't seen it. No one's showing me.
Don't search for Sega Mega Drive. You know that was a thing for a long time, right? If you search for Sega Mega Drive, child sexual abuse is illegal. This was, there were all of these because this is what Pizzagate was really about, was that there were people on the internet that were human trafficking using specific code terms. Right. And it hit really hard to people that did drugs, because you might remember somebody from college who told you that, if you want some LSD, just like ask me for dance lessons or something like that. So you knew, like, pizza is a great one, because how many people were selling weed or something and they were driving around in a car selling pizza? So there was a connection there that was pretty obvious.
Well, the connection I'm trying to make here, which is even why I'm bringing this up, is because I see on some level some weird relatability to this statement that we were getting from the previous administration, that there's nothing that we can do about but we're doing what we can for the border. And then you see how quickly that can change. We should, like, you weren't, like, that whole thing, like, as whether Kamala is a border czar or not, or whatever the title is, like, the fact is that these things nothing was being done about this. The border was wide open. So when people say this is Trump's fault, what's happening with ICE, it's like, I don't see what he's doing as that dissimilar at all from what Obama did, that was considered a nonpartisan issue at the time. I have footage that's pretty easy to find online of people from the Obama administration being called out on skipping due process for illegal aliens. They say, well, it's gotten so out of control. Like, if we go through all the levels of their day in court and all this stuff, they're going to be here for how long? They're like, we want to nip this in the head. And like, at the time, like, I didn't like to see it. Like, I saw footage of what ICE was doing while Obama was president. They used to call him the deporter in chief. Like, that was like a thing that people said about Obama. Like, he deported more people than Trump ever has. Yet we accepted it for the most part. And what's funny is, I remember Alex Jones talking crap about Obama deporting people and how Gestapo like it was,
Yeah.
And so, like,
well, it was pretty weird, dude. Like the Mexican Joker, right? The South Park episode, because like the way Obama was doing it. This is something. Even when the Democrats started saying, "Oh, how could Trump do this?" They were showing pictures of Obama's deportation. They're kidnapping kids. They're wrapping them in Mylar blankets. They look like these little metal burritos. What's going on here? So, well, it was really like inhuman. There was a lack of emotional connection or care what was being done, and it was cutthroat and terrifying.
Well,
I don't know.
This is I don't want to say, like, I'll say it, but I don't want to say like Hegelian, just because now that's such an overused and an almost like amorphous term. But like,
Dialectical, all right,
very dialectical, yeah. But like the Hegelian, it's sometimes I think my own misconception that I'm breaking. It's not like there's these two pillars and the pendulum is swinging between these two options of these two pillars. The pillars are just the things that are holding it up so that the pendulum can swing all alone. But like, there's still a certain goal in mind. And for example, when we talk about the Mexican Joker is a great example, the South Park one. But it's like the president or the political party that postures as if they are the loving, caring, bleeding heart option. They're the ones that have to do the most heinous things. And then the one that's supposed to be like the lawgiver, the authoritarian, like they're the one, like, for example, Trump, if he bans bump stocks, you don't have as many Second Amendment people freaking out than if Obama had done it. Just the same way that if Obama is the one deporting and putting people in cages, no one's going to freak out as much as if it were Trump doing it, because the one that's doing the thing that you expect them to do is going to get more of the hate. But if the person in power is doing the thing that you're not expecting them to do, then it's kind of like the people you're describing, David, where it's like they have to come up with an option C to explain why this is, it's agent provocateurs all the way down. But really, the Hegelian aspect of this is that it's not like one side always does one thing and the other side always the other thing. It's like whoever has the most political capital about that specific thing is the one that can do something about it.
Right. So Brian, in Canada, like, isn't your excuse me, I'm not very educated on this, so excuse me if I don't understand this correctly, but my understanding is that when it comes to your leadership, it's very similar in certain ways to what they have in Russia. But if your leader is popular, if they are well liked, they can stay in power indefinitely, right? You will vote them out if they become unpopular. I kind of like that, but at the same time, you could see how that could get manipulated. Like,
so do at least two holiday specials for Degrassi, and then you're allowed to be prime minister.
I mean, we've only had, we just got a new prime minister, but without a change of ruling party, right? It was basically they just changed their dirty diaper. But we only had two prime ministers for like 17 years or something. We had Stephen Harper for a long time with the Conservatives, and then Trudeau, where it's like if you win a majority government and you get like 4 or 5 years, but then you can win other elections and keep going on, So we had these two prime ministers that have like just only because of the way the electoral system works, that they're they have this inertia and stay, and there's a lot of I'm not voting for you, I'm voting against the other guy kind of thing that can keep someone in power that way a long time.
The British royal house is like fine with the employee, the manager of the Burger King that is Canada, then the British government will just keep them going. I don't mean it like that. I love your country. Don't get me wrong.
That's fine. No, please. It's very worth insulting. There's lots of, we need to be taken down several pegs. And
who'd you guys end up with? Like, who's the guy in charge now? Like, I'm sorry, Mark
his name is amazing. Mark Carney.
Oh my God.
For God's sake, a carny is a predator who preys on marks,
Yeah.
Oh my God,
I can't get over it. But
I didn't even put that together, dude.
I didn't until you said it, but I've read it, and it's just you saying it. It's so great. And he's a carny,
right?
because this was the thing. I felt sure this was how I read. When Trump was got in and started making these jokes about the governor of the 51st state. I was immediately like, well, because that's the thing about Mark Carney, is that he was the governor of the Bank of Canada and then the governor of the Bank of England. So I sort of read that as like a bit of a dog whistle that the governor is going to replace Justin Trudeau, the governor, the bank governor. We're going to get the governor. Also, he reminds me of Governor Devlin from Oz. That's who I think of with Mark Carney is like my main free association to
solid reference.
God. Dude, but
he looks a lot like Kittredge from Mission Impossible as well, but that's beside the point. But yeah, Mark Carney, man. But so this thing, and Canadians freak out about this. Like, what, this guy, nobody voted for this guy. It's like, well, yeah, that's our system, man. Like, we're not a democracy, we're a constitutional monarchy, and they can the ruling party can decide to change the prime minister if they want, and you can say you're mad about that, but if they're not worried they're going to lose the next election, that's how the system works. So
Right.
Crazy.
So if something comes out like it did with the British Prime Minister, that he had sex with the dead pig for his fraternity, after Black Mirror like totally predicted it not long beforehand that would come out, because they literally had an episode about the British Prime Minister having sex with a pig to save his daughter. Like,
Oh, wow.
so that if say something like that was to come out and all of a sudden people didn't like this Mark Carney at all, like how long would it take to get him removed? Like, because he could be in there for the next 50 years. He could be in his 80s still being, Prime Minister of Canada, right? If he was really well liked, right? Like that's how you have it set up. So, but if he wasn't well liked, could you remove him within a year?
Oh yeah. They can they could remove him within a week and replace him
really?
with a different member of the Liberal Party as the leader, and they just say like, yes, that's because we're your responsible ruling party. We just, as soon as we learned that he was no longer viable, we replaced him with a better leader, and that's why you like us. They can just you just switch out the leader.
I have to comment on something here. Somebody says the scariest Black Mirror episode for me is when they have to run on those treadmills for energy. That's episode 2 of season 1, after the episode that I'm talking about with the pig. And that guy at the end who has to reenact that thing where he's like, he got on their show and he puts the glass to his neck or whatever, and then they make him do that repeatedly into the future. Like, just do that thing that you did, because people really were responding to that. That is Bernie Sanders. It's not like it's only Bernie Sanders, but like that's what it feels like Bernie Sanders is doing to me. It's like, can you do that thing again that you were like, oh, fight the oligarchs, so stick it, you know what I mean? Like that's yeah.
Nice.
I don't know. Yeah,
there's
examples of that.
Nice. I'm not familiar with Black Mirror, but I wanted to say just a passing thought earlier. Andreas, you referred to like a manager of a Burger King or whatever. That's absolutely right on, because I like to think of the the prime minister is this very kind of like glorified title, but I prefer to think of him as the property manager. That it's like not the landlord, not because the prime minister is not our head of state. Our head of state is the king or queen of England. And there is a figure within the Canadian government who is the kind of local head of state, and they're called the Governor General. That's the representative of the Queen of England. So, they're supposed to be like, hey, I'm just hands off, formally ceremonial. But the truth is, every time they pass a law, they have to go get the Governor General to sign it on behalf of the monarch.
Oh,
and
so
theoretically, they could refuse to do so. They could refuse to give royal assent. But it's just one of these things where it's like, yeah, royal assent is automatic because they are not trying to dispute what Parliament says, but until they want to. So they have to go like when a party wins an election, they have to go to the Governor General and say like, we would like to form a government. And then the Governor General will say, okay. That's the actual head of state, not the prime minister. So the PM to me stands for property manager.
I mean, I think about Turtle Island a lot recently, actually. The whole idea of the Turtle Island in Canada is the Turtle Island, right? And I don't know if you ever saw that documentary Ungrip that talks about Canada and the difference between the nation or the state or the landmass, right? Because it might be that Canada has more to do with the maritime government that the British Navy kind of built up, and their agreement to kind of control the lands of the indigenous natives, right? Because that's why they keep bringing up the first natives, right? As a group that has a certain amount of I want to say power, but maybe just authority that's been taken, the authority that's been licensed to the Canadian government in the process of kind of taking over, removing the figureheads, the patriarchs of the American First Nation people, and setting up this kind of precedent for a commonwealth that has, the Queen of England didn't want to manage countries. Like that's a lot of work. Like the Queen of England can go jet skiing while you put other people in charge so that the banks can run. And how does a state work? A state, as Weber defines, the monopoly of violence. So you have the monopoly of violence in Canada, and they can force people to pay these debts, taxes, tariffs, whatever, to tithings to the banks. And so the banks end up controlling. I mean, this is what makes the money for the rest of this tiny little island, like the United Kingdom, that's controlling not just Canada, but any part of the Commonwealth, right? And this happened to Australia too. In the 70s, the Australian Parliament refused to do what it was told. What did they do to it? They freaking fired them. The Queen of England had them removed, and a new government put in place. So it's kind of, I mean, I hate saying that because it sounds like I'm dissing Canadians, and I don't know how clear I was about Degrassi. I love your country. Like, I really do. I have a lot of fanatical feelings about Canada. And it's kind of but the same thing about California or the United States. Like, these are controlled annexed territories of some horrifying maritime military state industrial complex. God, I'm so grateful that I'm talking to David Icke on Monday. This is going to be great. You know?
Oh, yeah, nice. Cool.
Applicable.
We're
How dare
problems
you,
that way. But yeah, I mean, there's even problems with in terms of the monopoly of violence. You know, there are parts of Canada, particularly out west, where that's the only authority that Canada has, and they never actually got around to enacting they only have a de facto rule over parts of particularly out west, and they never secured any de jure authority at all. You know, like there's people in British Columbia who are like, hey, we've always lived here. No one ever came and conquered us. We never signed any treaty. We never anything. You people just sort of showed up, started developing, started patrolling, and now you talk as if this is part of Canada, but you never got it from us. This is still literally to the point where when we hosted the Olympics in Vancouver, they had to, that was I don't know how successfully they downplayed this for an international audience, but technically those Olympics were co-hosted by Canada and the local First Nations, because if they didn't include the local First Nations as co-hosts, those First Nations could have made a legal fuss that would have made the whole thing impossible, because it would have brought to a head this question of you don't actually this is not your territory. You just patrol it. You just have de facto enforcement.
Isn't that kind of the idea?
Adorable though. I mean, come on, the RCMP. Sorry.
Our country reeks of trees.
Yeah, they're adorable if you don't have any bad memories.
I really want to we're going to reboot. I have a show called MK Canada that I haven't done in a while. We need to reboot this show and get back to talking about all the weird stuff in Canada. Oh my God, Camp X and everything else. And when you talk about the RCMP, the informants, decades of spying on social reformers, everything that the RCMP does is it's a way more technicolor and scary CIA that deserves to be kind of acknowledged at some point.
Yeah, at Camp X, man, it opened, just by what a fortuitous coincidence that it opened the day before Pearl Harbor was attacked.
Weird,
just
right?
When we really needed a training center over here for the war effort.
Really good. You know about IFDA, right?
That's real.
Pardon?
That's super real.
December 7th, 1940.
Not just that, but Camp X was the epicenter of so many different other MK Ultra programs of LSD dealers, and it was where you would send your psychedelic James Bonds to, and then let them disperse back to the world.
There couldn't have been a Degrassi without Camp X. I'm telling you right now.
So December 6th.
Bond, it's like Sergeant Pepper was an OPP officer, an Ontario police officer, and James Bond is named after a Toronto street,
Right, and Q was a Canadian officer involved with Camp X originally. That's the whole point of why this happened. What did they call D-Day in German? X-Tag. Ooh, nice. It's all about Camp X. And let's talk about If Day just for 2 seconds. I want to go back to that because I know David wants to go there. But you know about If Day, right? Yeah, for sure. X Day.
Oh God, yeah, in Winnipeg. Oh boy,
dude. So they literally took over the streets of Canada without telling anybody. They had a simulated German takeover of Winnipeg, right? So they straight up. They had people walking around in SS outfits and Nazi helmets. They they printed newspapers with the crossed out Winnipeg Tribune as Das Winnerpegger Lugenblatt. They told people this is what would happen in Canada if you don't buy war bonds. And then they proceeded to make Yeah,
The original rehearsal.
Yeah, you're reminding me of like
It's a psyop.
event 201 or something. So you're telling me, so Camp X is December 6th, 1941. The next day is Pearl Harbor, and then the day after that, America declares war. So they're like, that's
people forget this. People forget this because everyone's like, oh, well, America didn't enter the war until December 7th. Well, because before that, Canada was part of the United Kingdom, was certainly part of the war. And the amount of back and forth between I want to remember the names of the Vancouver money, who's like when you talk about Toronto, especially in Vancouver, there's like the Wall Street money, like the old families that have the money that are associated with Wall Street who live across the pond. I can't remember right now. We'll do it MK Canada, but the Canadian money that was going back and forth, a big part of that, even before the Fitzgeralds, right? The Fitzgeralds and the Kennedys were doing the liquor smuggling during the Prohibition, and by the point of the billions of dollars that had been made, this was part of a lot of that money went back and forth. Like, all right, now you have to pay us back by buying American military industrial complex equipment that we can say we didn't actually donate to the cause of the war, although we did that a lot too, but that Canada ended up purchasing all this equipment, and we were the entire time building infrastructure before the war, before we were in the war in 41, infrastructure in Canada. So the amount of United States helping the United Kingdom through building Camp X in Canada, it's just completely crazy to follow the money,
Right.
What the hell is Will Morgan saying in the comments here? He has the day after, but Will Morgan says, what did he say that Camp X is where Kevin Spacey learned to act, and now here he's saying, I don't know what this is in reference to, the day after the Kevin Spacey was
Will, you're off of work. You should be in here if you really want to tell us this stuff. All right, Brant,
Louis. I didn't realize this chat was raging.
Oh, it rages hard, bro.
I try and peek over at it every so often because sometimes there's some gems in there for sure. But and sometimes it keeps the conversation on track too if we get a little wherever, Yeah.
We need to be kept on track.
Oh yeah, it reminds me though about just mentioning the during Prohibition and the bootlegging and stuff that obviously that was huge for Canada. It just reminds me briefly of when I saw the Kingsman. You've seen those movies?
Oh yeah,
the private intelligence agency. They're totally loyal to the crown and everything, but they're not official government, so they can get stuff done better. And then in the sequel, they go and meet up with their American counterpart, who are a lot richer because they made their money selling booze. And it's called Statesman rather than Kingsman. And various clues in the movie as well. I thought there were some details that helped to twig to like that. I was like, no, this is representing. These are the Canadian backup, not the American. Like the booze fortune private intelligence agency. And Statesman is like Sleeman is one of the big brewers up here that made a ton off of bootlegging. So like I was pretty sure that the Statesman in that movie was really talking about the Canadian backup to the British thing.
Well, there's a definitely connection between both, starting with Canada, because the Fitzgeralds end up using the money they make to establish themselves in the United States as well. And this is how Kennedy gets in power, is through the Canadian Scotch money during the Prohibition. It's because without the mafia and Frank Sinatra and all the romantic stories you've heard about supporting the Cosa Nostra, supporting Kennedy getting elected, it's the money. It's the money from Canadian liquor that makes it possible. So the Catholic connection to the Protestant Scottish rite starts in Canada. And it's important because Pope Pius, who's supporting the Reich during the German takeover of Europe, they switch sides, right? And they end up working with the OSS and with the Lutheran Reformation. So however you look at it, it really all comes down to Canada. But then there's Guy Ritchie's show. I want to say The Gentleman is connected to the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. And this is interesting to me that Guy Ritchie has a movie called series, right? Called The Gentleman.
He has both. There's a movie and a series.
Yeah, but this is weird because it's about his home weed empire, right? And I think the weed empire, there could be a couple ways to look at this, whether this is connected directly to the Scotch Prohibition Empire, but there's something about that. Certainly the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare talks about Winston Churchill connecting and creating this private organization because it couldn't be on the books that this existed at the time. It had to exist. They needed to build with the agents. They had some sort of a control over the, the African. There were places that if Britain had gone technically in order to take the submarines and to kind of to destroy the Reich's boat, the military Marine Corps, then they would have had a bigger problem with breaking war treaties or something like that.
Can I just point something out that is relatable to the show the other day? Is that when we were talking about John Dee and the way that he utilized occultism for things that relate to, the royalty, using his knowledge and applying it and all this stuff. If you look at Guy Ritchie, like Guy Ritchie got into Kabbalah with Madonna. But if you look at the particulars around, like if you watch Revolver and you look at like and the Sherlock Holmes films and his application, it's very European Kabbalah. And having looked at the Kabbalah Society or whatever they're called, the group that Madonna was involved in, I actually don't see that much of a connection, if at all, with he's very like into the Crowleyan thing. So maybe that was why they broke up. Maybe he was like into European Kabbalah and she's I don't know. But when she was asked about it on a talk show, I wish I had a clip of this. I don't remember which one it was, but they go, oh, what is Kabbalah? And she goes, oh, it's just a study of the New Testament, you know. But anyway, if you look at what his treatment, like in Revolver, like he has Mr. Gold. Nobody sees Mr. Gold, but Mr. Gold sees everybody. It is very much like a communication of the Klepo mirroring tetragrammaton. So you have this kind of other so his like gangster hierarchy that he plays with, and more things than just Revolver, like he applies Kabbalistic principles as they relate to the reflection or the twisted version of this other thing. He shows that the goings on in the corrupt like gangster world, but you could take everything that Guy Ritchie is showing, like you were pointing out, like with the weed kingpin and all that, you could apply it just as easily. That like what he's saying about like gangster dynamics actually applies to like diplomacy and global dynamics. Like you can take it to that level, and like that whole thing
and
with
to an
like
Old Testament level too.
Yeah, like Mr. Gold, like he doesn't exist, but everyone's afraid of him. Like that is like this idea of like when you look at the social structure in like the idea that there's like the Illuminati is like overseeing this whole thing. It's like it's Santa Claus, like Santa, Satan, whatever, Saint Nick, old Nick. You know what I mean? Like there's something going on there. And it's like he goes through like there is a specific system that he's repeatedly presenting in his films when he gets to do that gangster thing, even all the way back to Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, which is funny because that's before he ever met Madonna. Like it seems like maybe that was their real connecting point. Like he was already in the Kabbalah, maybe, and the way the media presented, like, oh look, Madonna got him into Kabbalah, and it's like no, it looks like he was into European occultism, and that they just like linked up, and then was still. And
he's clearly gotten more aware of Jewish mysticism. I mean, like the Covenant, right, is a good example of this. You know, where they're talking about the military film that's really showing like this honor promise there, because you are your word. There's nothing left than your word. And in the beginning, there was the word, and the word was God, and this whole thing. The other one being Exodus 23. We're talking about cannabis there. Mm-hmm. You know, this was like because like the idea that the wine sacrifice of the Eucharist versus there was Exodus 23. I know some Christians get upset when we talk about cannabis in the Bible, but you know, they recently found the Negev Desert, the Tel Arad, the temple site. They found Jewish traces of burnt cannabis, just generally burnt cannabis in the ancient Jewish temple shrine, showing that, you know, yes, cannabis was a part of Jewish mysticism going back.
They didn't inhale, though. I hear they did not inhale.
I've heard it suggested that the oil that they anointed feet with was like hash oil based.
Totally, according to Exodus 23, it's like 6 pounds of hemp oil that goes into it, and this is one of the reasons the Sadducees are so upset at the messianic Emmanuel, because Christ is Greek for anointed one. Messiah is Aramaic for anointed one. What are we anointing in again? We're using this priestcraft oil. What's this oil made of? Well, Exodus 23 says cannabis oil. This bothers a lot of people. But this is the difference between the Eucharist and being a co-heir of Christ, which is Romans 8:17. It's not that you're like a servant to the Lord. This is a very feudalistic orthodox. This is the way that Europeans in the Dark Ages looked at it, of course, because how could a Lord who beats you into submission ever imagine that you will someday in heaven be a co-heir with Christ, right? Even though that's what it said, ye are gods and etc. They're trying to push it away from that. So they're saying you're just going to drink of the blood of this sacrificial character. That's not what Christ is pushing. Christ is talking about your co-heirs. You got to live with, do the same thing he does, which includes the therapeutica. Therapeutica is the Greek word where therapy comes from, and the Therapeuticos were the Gnostic cult in Egypt. The Coptics were a part of originally. The Coptics are a schism of the Therapeutica, which said, hey, Christ was saying we're all supposed to be anointed ones, not just these rich dudes in the temple that he flipped the trading tables of, right? So I think getting back to Guy Ritchie, this is what he's pointing to, essentially saying, hey, we're all kind of fighting this battle, right? Which is why the battle is the essentiality of the story.
Isn't it funny too that he did Aladdin with what was it, Will Smith or something? Like he went from doing these gangster movies to doing the musical production, the live action Aladdin film. But Thomas knows, because we, in our research looking at the Golden Bough, is that there's aspects to the story of Aladdin that tie directly into the Golden Bough mythos, and big time.
Which is also interesting to me, because on the Occult Disney podcast series, we found out that Aladdin is actually a Chinese story, and not like a Middle Eastern story at all. Like the actual origins of it.
The origins,
which almost goes to show that the Golden Bough is even more universal, like proof that it's more universal.
That's what's in the Golden Bough. It's a little misleading, because when we talk about Nemi and the Diana's Mirror and all of that, where he's focusing on this ritual as the origin story of the ritual, he's also throughout the book describing how all of these kind of archetypal components that play into this ritual are seen all over the world, and ancient China is one such example that he goes into great detail in.
The Golden Bough.
Yeah, I mean, for real, a deep bow, bale dale. This is the thing here with the hieroglyphic language. It's also important to remember that 100 years ago, the Han Chinese were a small minority that had very little to do with the rest of China. The Uyghurs are not the only group. There's 300 different ethnicities which have basically gone extinct, and the Russo Manchurians, right? They were everyone. I remember seeing movies where they have white people playing the leaders of China at one point, and thinking to myself, that can't be historically accurate. But then you go back and you look into it, you're like, whoa, there really are a lot of different kinds of people from this region of China. And even today, like Southwest China, it's all about Arabic, and Northwest China, the Uyghur territories are all about. It's not an accident. Kothar, base Kothar 710. Thank you very much. We need to start pushing more for super chat goals. Hey, super chat is harder, guys. Thank you very much. Be like Kothar, right? Cool.
I do have a sort of a sync topic of the day, or a thought.
Yes, please. That's what it means to stay on track, by the way, is that's the name of the show.
Leave it to the Canadian to get us back on track.
I don't know if anyone's ever read this classic, hilarious sync book, The Psychopathology of Everyday Life by Mr. Sigmund Freud. This is his book about basically the Freudian slip.
She was wearing a Freudian slip.
It's kind of isn't it a coincidence that the thing you said by accident just happens to be arguably even more meaningful and accurate than the thing you meant to say, So it in a way, it's a sort of a sync theory, but particularly he gets a little bit of a lesser, everybody's heard of a Freudian slip. It's maybe one of his most...
right. I was talking about Freddy Krueger, and I said cougar, and everyone knew what was on my mind. So, yeah.
Yeah. Although, and there was someone in the chat there was asking, I saw is Stanley Kubrick bi? And it reminds me once of someone long ago, I was in a chat room and someone was asked if I was gay, and I typed NO send, but it turned out that my fingers were resting on the wrong keys. So instead of NO, I typed the two letters just to the left of them, which were BI. Send. Oh, shit. So it's like a Freudian slip on typing,
Right. But, if you watch Spartacus, you might get that impression, but you got to understand that was the studio that made that tub scene like that. That wasn't really, Kubrick didn't want to have No, it's true actually. Though he did have a lot of gay innuendo stuff, especially in Doctor Strangelove. But yeah.
So the thing about this is that like the kind of lesser known, what I found really hilarious reading this book was there's a whole chapter where Freud gets into a side of the theory where you can't generate a random number. That if you ask someone for a random number, you can then like psychoanalyze the number they give you the same way that you could do a free association of words, right? And it gets kind of delirious at times. And you can see, he's like writing this book, it's like 100 years ago or something. And it's like, man, if you could only know about the future of how people treat, supposedly random numbers and psychoanalyze them, it's like the sort of way of being like, that people will okay, I'm getting ahead of myself here, but the idea is that this theory that you can't generate a random number is and of like psychoanalyzing numbers that way, it's reminiscent a little bit of the idea of saying like, oh, how many people were injured? 33 people were injured. Well, I wonder if this is a truly random number, or not random, but like truly generated by real events, or whether it was invented. Did someone? So the idea is like, if you're making a fake event, right? Or never even mind a fake event, just you're fudging numbers, you're embezzling, right?
Right.
You have to pick specific wrong numbers. You can't just like, you can't fudge numbers. It's not like putting on a green. You don't nudge it and then it ends up somewhere.
You actually can at times. You can at times, and I'll tell you how. So, like for example, we just had how many days? It'd be cool if Alex was here for this, but I guess he's in the world doing stuff. But how many days between the beginning? I believe it's the first day of the LA riots that happened in 1992. To the riots that we're experiencing now, which started, I believe, on June 5th or 6th. So that's 33 years and 33 days. But you have to have that question. Are you counting the last day as like, it's hard to explain that. Is the day included? Or are you saying it's up to the day before it is the time? So is it 33 or is it 33 years and 32 days? I would argue that it's even more symbolic for it to be 33 years and 32 days, because 32 degrees leading up to the 33rd to be approved by the council and there's a big gulf of distinction between the significance of the 32 versus the 33 in Freemasonry. But
So
nice.
Sparrow knows the fact that Andreas hates plugging super chats means he deserves super chats even more. Thank you for the show, gentlemen. 10 and 999 is 1999. 19 is the number that seems to come up a lot. I've been noticing, like, it's like when people want a random number in a psyop, they'll write 19 days this, 19 days that, 19 people were 19 hostages. 19 just a really believable number for some reason.
It just feels right. So I mean, this is the idea of like what makes a number feel right, to pick randomly.
19
letter S, which means Synctank. So there you go, full circle.
Oh, you're so beautiful. You're a beautiful man.
Why was it that William S. Burroughs said that Brian Geisen was the only man that he ever had any respect for in his entire life? Brian Geisen would have that idea of like, how random is random? Like it's like the cut up method and everything involved in it. They're like, they don't believe that there's such thing as random. And it's like in Batman, like, you're a detective now. You're not allowed to believe in coincidence. And Sirius Black is telling us that. You know what I mean? As Commissioner Gordon, like, it's just,
Well, and so then this is like, now as detectives, just amateur detectives at large, who are every day we're inundated with news of things happening, but we suspect some of them are, either, fudged or totally fake. And so as detectives, people are finding like, well, if this event has that number and that number and that number in it, then to me, that speaks of the psychology of that fits a psychological profile of a fake event rather than a truly randomly generated by just like random action.
Because real blood looks fake, and you need chocolate in a black and white movie to believe it. Alex returns to say randomness is the illusion. I think that's kind of a good point to make, because we talked about this randomly randomly. Last week on APM, I was talking about what's more random. If you're going to flip a bunch of bones for your I Ching, or you're going to try to like predict random numbers, or you're going to make an RNG, like a pseudo RNG, like using a computer. Because if you use a computer, you can probably, I mean, it's my opinion, and I think other people might and have agreed with me, that a computer can digitally produce a more resolute, random seeming number than nature can, than you can, for the same reasons that Linus mentioned. There's psychological reasons. There's also limits on physics.
I wouldn't say more. It can just get there faster than you could, but I wouldn't say that it's more random because of that. It can just go through more permutation. Like if you look at like ciphers and encryptions, the way that they usually use random number generators, to oversimplify, some will use like an elliptical. So it'll not just grab a random number, it'll grab like a random position on like a sine wave, and then use that angle of that sine wave and just do all sorts of weird like esoteric things to eventually give you the number 19 at the end of it anyways, right?
And this is all just techniques for trying to bracket out like your choice. You know, it's like, I don't want to influence it. Like, how do we bracket out?
If I'm flipping a coin and everyone's like, wow, you're flipping a coin, I can flip a coin in the air and land it in my hand. And kind of, it's like when you flip money and Austin Powers knows how many bills it is. You can kind of know how many flips you got there. Whereas with a random number seed, the more random the number seed is, the less priority the machine has for emphasizing where that number seed comes from. The higher the resolution of the randomness, depending on what circumstances are going on, the less that you have natural, because we're thinking that nature is going to produce truly random chaotic phenomenon. It doesn't. There's a lot of truly natural mathematics, applied sciences of natural mathematics, that make it more predictable what occurs in nature than something that can be produced by a machine. And that might be associated with the gestalt of psychology, but it might also just be that we're living in a simulation, or that there are limitations to what we can actually achieve because we are psychological beings. So I think it's fair to say, like, the virtual idea of randomness, randomness exists more literally in a virtual scenario than it does in a natural scenario.
So Cyanide Pill in the comments says a random number generator from a computer isn't truly random. Decaying radioactive particles is the closest we can get to truly random numbers. I'm thinking of the film Annihilation, like when I read that, because you're saying, well, I agree with what you're saying, Andreas, when you're talking about nature and the randomness, because you can see this order. But when it gets to the radioactive particles, like you're going to a place that's like, okay, it's technically organic, but it's a level of distortion being introduced into that framework that you can't. It just destroys
those decaying radioactive particles are only seemingly random because we don't have the technology that is minute enough to efficiently like predict the next emission of whatever that's going to be. And just because of that, because it's faster and we don't have that, like, we can use that as sort of like a shortcut. But I think on a long enough timeline, someone could be like, well, technically that's not random either, because based on, like the atmospheric pressure and the humidity and like all these other factors,
it's unknowable. It's different.
It's knowable, right?
So I'm convinced that the film Arrival and the film Annihilation are actually like a meta narrative that's meant to go together, kind of like
Arrival and which one?
Arrival and Annihilation. That, like, what they're doing in Arrival, where they're communicating with the alien entity and they're figuring out its language, is meant to be a meta narrative with this film Annihilation, where you're looking at what he seems to be pointing at about the decaying radioactive, like what they call in this film the shimmer, that they kind of go together, because you have the organism itself, and then you have the communication of the language of the organism, and then figuring out that what one could perceive as random smoke signals essentially are actually like that there's something being articulated through them. And so they're very related.
That's interesting. I'm reminded as well, like, this idea of the random number generation, whether it's from the physics decaying thing or just a computer random generating numbers, that I thought this could be you could use that Freudian theory, or maybe it's a fact, I don't know. You could use that to come up with a kind of a better maybe or a novel way of defining, this question of like when does a program become intelligent? When is an AI not just a machine? When does it become sentient and intelligent? And those are usually those definitions, or those the boundary line or something. The qualifying is usually defined by something that it can do. Like once a program can do this, then they have achieved sentience. But I like this idea that when a program can no longer generate a random number, that's when it's sentient. Like when it can't help but, when any number it generates can't help but be meaningful or psychoanalyzable, then they've reached our same stage that Freud said we can't generate random numbers,
Right, but
what? I gotta start asking.
Something they can no longer do rather than that they now can do.
I gotta start asking for super chats way more. I'm gonna be able to buy gas this week. Thank you, Eric Rasmussen. Your network is great. Sam Tripoli, Jay Dreyer, Old Wolf, Florida, Santos Bonacci, David Icke. These are people that I know and love. Thank you for bringing them up. How do I join in the fun? Do I have to be intelligent? No, you don't have to. I mean, like I talk to. I'm here. I want in. I'm based, smart, conversational. Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's $11. You got to do $11.
Yeah, it's $11. You can't. Yeah,
you're off by one, and you can only try once every 6 months.
I don't know if you were watching earlier at the beginning of the stream, but we talked a bit about the Xirtus X group here, right? So if you go to the Xirtus community or reach out to Andreas Xirtus on X, get into the Xirtus X community by talking to Andreas Xirtus, who is I, and follow, post something there, reach out. I'll definitely, I'll find you. I see that name. I've seen that name before. Happy to talk to you, of course. But thank you for the support. We really need it and appreciate it.
Yeah, I think if somebody wanted to pitch a topic that they felt that they were particularly interested in, and if it spoke to us, maybe, I mean, that's what just happened with this doctor that we just had on here. He was like, he's pitching that he's really interested in the Golden Bough and that he's been following our show and our kind of circling around that, and he wants to get involved and have that conversation. To me, I'm like, oh, what do you want to, somebody says what they want to talk about, and it's something that's like I'm really interested in. I think, that'll go a long way. It's just like
that's 100% accurate. Yeah.
So
sorry for the derail. I just was flattered. Thank you for supporting us. But yeah, keep going. Oh, I wanted to bring up, because you brought up Freud really quickly, if that's cool. Just because you brought up Freud, we talked about Freud a lot recently because of Moses and Akhenaten too, and that whole idea of Moses and monotheism, and this idea, is Moses Akhenaten, right? Like you've read this, like this idea, like essentially Freud's book says that he's the priest of Sarseth that left the church of Akhenaten to build the Opportunistic perspective, but that there's like multiple different perspectives of the divine council, right? The divine council is like the biblical idea before the
finest cocaine that got him here, by the way.
This is true. You have to be pure of heart and of cocaine to actually understand this stuff, but
or fentanyl, but not as much.
Dude, yeah, don't do that. Oh.
Freud never had access to that, as far as I know. But
is Linus from Scandinavia? No, he's from Canada, which is the next best thing. Essentially, they're pure of heart.
I want to say
the name Linus is. I didn't take my name. I didn't take the name Linus. It wasn't inspired by any particular Linus. But it's interesting that the in retrospect, I find it interesting that the second pope was Pope Linus. Which is arguably the first pope, because
Peter just
when I say he was the first pope who didn't know Jesus personally, right? He was the first pope who was given this task of like, you have to carry on this thing indirectly. So he had to minimize the maximum possible loss of the signal or transmission that way from not knowing Jesus personally.
Or like try to justify the Peter apostasy as much as possible. Good job, Pope Linus. I have a lot of qualms with Saint Peter. The guy that Jesus said, Satan, get behind the, this whole thing there seems a little bit, but Linus just seemed like he's like, hey, I gotta like the best of a bad situation. That's kind of what Linus did.
We talked recently, I don't know if it was on this show or I was just talking elsewhere, about like the real explanation apparently of like why the walrus was Paul. Here's a little clue for you all, and like how that relates to the biblical Paul. Okay, I probably went into
no.
it.
Obviously, you did bring it up, but I think you should elaborate harder
the
now.
Paul dead thing too. The two Pauls, and this like biblically, like consider that. You know what I mean? But like the rock of the church, right? So there's this idea that when you look at Alice in Wonderland, and there's a story of the walrus and the carpenter, and the being like Jesus, right? And the walrus. Like at the beginning of Dogma, they make the argument that it relates to the Hindu god of God Ganesh, right? But I don't go there. I don't think you need that. I think it's just like a communication around like that. How does this go? So
your audio got quiet. Am I crazy? Am I hearing?
You know,
no,
see if my phone was ringing or something.
No. I'm having an internet issue. I think somebody doesn't want me talking about this. Like this is some stuff that we're not supposed to.
This is weird. Why is this happening? Here, try again. I'm working on your audio for you. Go keep talking for a second here.
My audio for me, yeah.
No, now it sounds good. Just talk right into the microphone. Maybe that was all it was. Go ahead. Sorry.
No. I was watching myself spin. I think I'm having an internet issue. So and it's probably affecting the audio. But no,
It's
like
back.
in the story of the walrus and the carpenter, you have the carpenter being Jesus. They're getting the oysters or the clams or whatever they are because they want it. They're into their fold, right? So they have their congregation, but they got perverse intentions, like they're going to eat them, right? So it's like it's a statement on organized religion, particularly the church in this story. But for it to be that the walrus is Paul, it's saying that Paul is setting up the church. He's with the carpenter, Jesus, going to take them in, but the carpenter isn't really Jesus in this case. He's just like playing this character. He's like along for the ride, like he's not really the thing. Like, but there's a thing with like because it's in a Magical Mystery Tour when they're wearing the outfits and then they're like, oh, it was just whatever. He put on the mask and then I put on the mask and then it was like, which one of us is the walrus or whatever. But like, I think that they're really relating to Alice in Wonderland, and then that's the joke. That's why here's another clue for you all: the walrus is Paul because Paul is the one setting up. He's the rock of the church, right?
Yeah,
but yeah,
it makes total sense for sure. I mean, Paul, I've been thinking about that a lot this week for whatever, maybe because of that X-Church thing. It's just like Paul is Saul, and I was talking to these Christians, right? I started this religious group, and they're all talking like, why don't you believe in Pauline Christianity or the Nicene Creed or Paul? You say you believe in Jesus and all this other stuff, but you don't like any of the stuff that we think is important to kill people at the stake who don't agree with. So why shouldn't we burn you at the stake? Basically, is their question. And for me, it's like, well, Saul murdered all of the witnesses. Like, you even think the word martyr means dude who died getting killed for being a good person, which isn't what martyr means, right? Martyr means a witness, but all the witnesses were murdered by Paul. And they're like, we're at source, of course, which is like the book of Acts. I don't know if you read Acts. But
this is really important because to me, and maybe this is an oversimplification, but you look at the New Testament, you have the gospel, you have the Sermon on the Mount, you have these communications from Jesus that are written, and then you have all of these other books, and you have all the preachers kind of like working with illiterate people, telling them what the books say, who themselves often don't even really know. They're just like, it's like a game of telephone. We dealt with that for 2,000 years. Now people have access to a translation, which you can make your own arguments around that. But I guess the thing is that when you look at the Old Testament, and especially the Ten Commandments and all this, you have all of these places in Judaism where there's the search for loopholes, and you see so many examples of it in the Tanakh itself, where it's like you have David says not that Hashem says not to build the temple, right? Because the temple won't be built by human hands. Solomon goes and builds the temple anyway. How does he rationalize that? He's saying we're taking materials from an outside land and we're bringing them in. It's like the Egyptians carrying in the limestone. We don't know how they got it so far, whatever.
But the moment you cut that stone, you defile it. Right?
The moment that you do it, you're not doing the thing that was said. So you found a loophole. Much of the New Testament to me looks like, and not just the New
Paul,
Testament,
especially
but the papacy too. You have all these examples where I don't know how else to interpret this other than looking for loopholes in
Paul's doing.
What the gospel says.
Paul murders all the people who saw, because what does Jesus do? Jesus says, hey, the Deuteronomists and the Sadducees, the Deuteronomists screwed up. The Sadducees are keeping the screw up going. Here's how you're actually supposed to go back to doing things, restore things to the original way. What happens? They murder the guy, the Son of God. Then they murder all the people who saw him doing this practice. So they didn't want anyone to be able to practice Christianity the way Christ did. And what do they do after that? Paul, the guy who murdered these people, said, I actually met Jesus too. I know that they said they did, but I saw him before he went blind. I saw him on the side of the road. And you know what he told me? And he told me that I should blood sacrifice the guy, that he really wanted this. It wasn't an accident. It was actually God's plan. And you know what? I'm actually forgiven. I'm forgiven for murdering all of the original Christians.
We're going to listen.
And so are you.
We're going to take Tex Watson's word for what happened during Helter Skelter, right? Like there's something so messed up about that whole premise. It's like we're going to put our trust into the person who's then like one removed from the thing that's supposed to be like, and that's the question when people are talking about, you're having that debate in your group about like the word of God, is the Bible the word of God? And you're like, which Bible? For me, I would say just like, let's just look at the gospel in Greek and then look at how much we're trying to work around him not coming to destroy the law, but to fulfill the law, right? Like, and so like I see a million examples of that where people are like, in Christianity, I'm like, this doesn't seem to reflect what the gospel says. And it's like, oh, but this Pope in whatever era, he made this adjustment. And so, and here's the rationale for it. And like, that's why I have a hard time with a certain type of Catholic. Like a lot of Catholics I'll get along with great, but there's those kinds where they're like, no, what this Pope says, it actually trumps what the gospel has to say in this or that way. And I'm just like, I see that happening in the Jewish religion as well, where we're looking for loopholes, right? And it's like, no, can we just restore the law? I'm not talking about anything other than like the 10 commandments or the basic fundamental law, right? Like because you can get into the details, eye for an eye and whatever, and you're like, okay, well, you know, we're things develop and
the common sense stuff.
The common sense, which Einstein would say is just a bunch of, what was Einstein quote about common sense? Can we find that? It's just a bunch of prejudices that you collect before the age of 18 or something like that. But anyway, sorry.
Is there any like esoteric sect of Judaism that actually believes the written law is the God?
Common sense is the collection of prejudices. Common sense is a collection of prejudices acquired by age 18.
Because I guess in long form, what I'm thinking is that surely someone that is spent their entire life studying biblical texts and like religious, like the laws, has to realize like when you get to God, he's not gonna be like, it was a clever little workaround you found there, right? So the only thing that makes sense
depends on the God though, because I feel like if I were God, and I'm not, but I'm just saying, I'd be like, come in here. That's so I love you. That's what I do. You know, that's how I would look at it.
Very clever.
That version of God though would be indistinguishable from just saying that the laws written are the God. Like if God's gonna read the laws and also acknowledge the workarounds, then there's no difference between the set of laws that have been written versus the one that's there to enforce them.
We've gone over this before. The 10 Commandments are written out of anger from Moses himself. He goes up the mountain twice. The first time he gets it, he receives something. We don't know what that was. He comes back down. He's pissed off, smashes whatever that was the word of God. That was for what you're describing. Could be that is God for all.
Like free beer and weed for everyone.
Right. Whereas the 10 Commandments
are pissed off and writes a bunch of rules. But more or less,
the 10 Commandments come from the Ptahotep divine maxims, right? Which are like 42 divine maxims, and about 10 of them make it. Literally 10 of them.
What determines the fate of your soul, weighing your soul against the weight of a feather, right? So how light is your soul is based on how much you identify with the physical realm. And that's really the question. I have not. That is very much in line with Patanjali, by the way, of your identification with thought form and form in the external world. That's what's determining the weight of your soul, is your identification with the physicality. That's why it's I have not rather than like thou shalt. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, but I think it's fair to say, what's the chicken sacrifice called again? The caparot, right? Because if hear me out, if man is made in the image of God, then that means that even the Cohen priests are made in the image of God. And if the image of God is a Cohen priest, then God is a Jewish lawyer who loves loopholes. That kind of proves the point in a lot of ways.
Well, and it's also this idea of like why were we created in the first place? Like God already had a lot of adoring reply guys. He already had all the angels saying like "so true, King" to anything that he said. He's like, I want some people who are gonna like. I want some reply guys who are gonna just go out of their way to try to find some reason to disagree with me. Like that's.
I mean, it's funny, but that's legitimately what I think the whole point of life and humanity is.
It's a pen test. It's just a penetration test by God saying,
Yeah.
like, hey, how can you sneak through? Break
Well,
my firewall.
We're red team.
How can
We're
you-
red
how do-
team. We're doing
how
our
do we
job.
work-
Come on.
How do you work with these divine principles? Because you have the Titans and the Prometheans, and this idea that God is this sort of, God is kind of, God is omnipotent and omnipresent, but also confided or is entrapped, is somehow trapped by the laws of the divine principles. Whether God made these divine principles or these are the divine principles that allow for God to exist and thrive.
Right.
So for us to escape Eden or to escape the Matrix, like the Yaldabaoth Gnostic, apocalypse of Adam and Eve story, is that man is helping God liberate God's self from their own confines, right? This is like
exactly.
This is one of the
So this is a Jim Morrison quote, by the way, where he's like, windows work two ways, mirrors work one way. So like basically like God created man in its own image as tetragrammaton, right? Which is the family unit, right? Expressing itself in formation. But oh, you guys frozen? You're
Not me.
Can I hear you? Okay, cool. Okay. So the idea that when you say God created man in its own image, male and female created he, them, this is there's no way to translate this into English well because of the nature of English. It doesn't work the same way because like God is a verb, right? But there's this idea that when we're meditating on that and you think about God making us in its own image, we are then assuming that the way we perceive ourselves is actually us, that there's no influence or sheath around the reality of what's in front of us. That's why like apocalypse is to unveil or reveal, right? It's like, what even are we? Like, are we stardust? Are we golden? Like, got to get ourselves back to the garden. There's this issue of like, are we perceiving ourselves correctly? And if we're perceiving ourselves incorrectly, then we're perceiving God incorrectly. And God can perceive us correctly. That's why he's the ultimate judger, right? We're not in a position to judge because we're looking at a funhouse mirror version of ourselves and we're projecting that onto God. So we want it to be God created man in its own image, and we want to assume we see ourselves correctly to project that back onto God. And so that's why when Moses goes to look at God, all he can see is God's back parts, because God is always before. Paragot. You can't turn around and look at yourself because it's the nature of perception that it only goes one way. The witness is always before. You know what I mean?
Right. That's fascinating. And of course, we can't look at our own back parts in a mirror. We would need mirrors
isn't that what humanity? Because like there's only one maybe depends how you look at this whole Elohim thing, but the idea that we're a bunch. So we have a theos, this shared theology, this shared lens, because to look at this omnipresent deity, or even just look at existence entirely, one cannot do it. You need to have multiple people looking at the same time, which is what we can do.
Right.
So we have a pretty cool, we can look from this whole conversation or your parents and my children, this whole idea that there's a space-time awareness that humanity has that lets us look at this from a furthered angles or multiple dimensions. It's pretty sweet quality of the anthropic perspective, no?
Yeah. No, totally. Yeah. But there's a skin of the snake phenomenon going on. And it reminds me, what you're describing kind of reminds me of like that Alex Gray idea where you have this grid with all the eyes and it's only looking at itself, right? It can't like fold the other way, So, yeah. I don't know. It's difficult.
Well, but then you get back to that. We've done this before, but what is the sixth sense, and why is there only the sixth sense and all the other five are lies? Because the five senses are...
Bruce Willis is dead. No, sorry.
Yeah. Does he know he's alive? That hurts. I'm sorry, I wrote too soon.
How dare you spoil it for me?
No, like your eyes can see through touch, your ears can hear through touch, your vibration on the drum, your tongue's touch too. You've got a whole bunch of nasal, it's all touch, right? It's all touch sensation. Right. But Stephen Hawking would have tried to tell you, and probably the lawyers about his Epstein scenario, that you can't touch anything. Like there's nothing that you can really touch because of electrostatic.
Right.
So all you can really do is have the awareness of something else being touched. What is the sixth sense? Maybe empathy, which is the awareness of something else being touched. So all you have is the sixth sense, really.
This is why I like the thing where you do something that's like, why are you hitting yourself?
Right.
And then you can be like, technically, I'm not hitting myself because
Right. There's actually only
Deepest-
space in between. Yeah, but
It's
It's the
atoms,
deepest philosophical
it's
question. Why are we hitting
99.999999999% empty space. Don't you know that? The rest is more of a vibration or a musical note than it is anything solid matter.
Just
Yeah.
go with it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we got to
Damn it,
say
Stephen Hawking.
about these riots. Why would Trump do this? You know, and it's like it's Eric Andre with the gun. It's like, you know, shooting the guy. It's like, dude,
technically,
you know,
they're not touching the Molotov cocktail. They're not.
right. Yeah. It's not that which the eyes see; it's that by which the eyes can see. Know that alone to be Brahman, the eternal, and not what people here adore.
That's never gotten me out of a ticket, by the way.
right. Yeah. Well, you have to sign. We're gonna have David Icke on. We can discuss what happens when you sign that ticket, that you're affirming in that ticket that your natural self is one with your, you know, civil substitute reality self that's written in all caps. You know, you're affirming that this is my natural self that was the one speeding or whatever it was that you're being pulled over for, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You're agreeing to take the fall for your straw man or something, or agreeing to. Anyway, that reminds me, though, just suddenly bringing it back to the riots, there was this, it's sort of sync-ish, I guess, something about, the idea of the pallets of bricks, right? Where it's this very ambiguous, you know, who's paying for those? They're obviously not cheap, right? And so it's easy to assume that you know why they, you know, obviously whoever dropped these pallets of bricks off, they put them there because they would like them to be used in the way that is most easy for us to imagine them being used. But, you know, maybe not, because like it occurred to me there was this sort of thing where, you know, people were like, oh, look, it's happening again with the pallets of bricks, right? The mysterious pallets of bricks are showing up. And the protesters are then motivated to use that to throw at, you know, cops. But then on the other hand, there were some images of, they were like, look at this makeshift barricade that these protesters, that they just used, like found objects, you know, like some, you know, some big bricks or
through a bike, I don't know.
Ones are like shopping carts and this and that they sort of create a haphazard obstacle course across the road to just make it more difficult for vehicles to come across. And I just thought, you know, there's a sort of a like, you could use the bricks to build a proper wall across the road, you know, like not that would be, not to say that makes sense in a tactical sense or something, but there's just something about something almost even Masonic. Like I almost had this idea that it's like, no, it's these Masons are putting the bricks there. It's like a test that like, if you just start throwing the random bricks, then you're just proving that you're anarchy, you know? But if these protesters can, you know, be Masons and build a wall across the road, then suddenly it's like they're asking the cops, like, well, how's your discipline now? Because our discipline is good. We built a wall.
It's like Steve Jobs in the Human Centipede South Park. Why aren't they learning? Why can't they learn? Yeah, for sure.
Oh, how do I reach these kids? That's another one.
Still, I mean, South Park is the truth.
That is
the pyramid, exactly.
Oh my God, bro! I think you're right. That's a poignant point. Oh, sorry, go ahead, David. But also, go ahead.
That image that you just shared of the steps and the way that it goes like that was immediately when I remember there was that like online challenge where people were stacking up the crates and having to walk up the crates like a pyramid. Like I was like I had this kind of joke of like the Masons looking at that and being like, oh, the peasants, you know, this is their version of it. You know, you're just gonna. I got
the original printing of that behind me somewhere. It was like a 1950s Time Life magazine, like fold out.
You know, it's a super practical way to live
yeah.
your life. You know, this is just how you figure it out. And like, do you want to do the leaps on the right, or do you want to just take your time on the left, baby and stuff?
Right.
Yeah.
And the right.
The Mason
right
gets
side,
me. Thank you, Thomas. All right.
The right side, you also have to be Christian. I know that's debated, but the left side, you do not have to vow an allegiance to Christianity. The right side, you
Arab
do.
sciences,
the
more sciences and the Shriners. Yeah,
that's
correct.
There's a
that's actually adjacent. You have to go through the full left side, and then you can get into the Shriners.
Well, not that anyone is using Duncan's ritual now for the most part, like that's kind of outdated or whatever, but like that there's that notion that outside of what's written in the book of Duncan's rituals, that there's the secret test at the end. and there's different versions of it or whatever. People will say, "Oh, will you spit on the cross?" Now you have to spit on the cross, and they say, "I won't spit on the cross," and it's like, okay, good. You weren't really supposed to. You were just testing you, But there's like,
I can't say. There's things that I know that I'm not allowed to say.
Right,
Shame.
but beyond that, I'm doing the more like I don't know, mediocre version of it.
The
But
more-
there's like
let me just try and explain it in a way that I think I'm okay too. So, you ever been in a class where like a grading scale? Like if everyone fails, they'll raise it so that like the least dumb of the people gets an A and they get the pass.
They're getting graded on the
There's
curve.
a version of that. There's a version where if someone doesn't get every answer correct, sometimes it's a sliding scale depending on how well everyone did that year so far. Because sometimes if you had to fail the whole class in Masonry, like everyone would look at you like you're a bad teacher, but really it's like these kids. How do I get through to these kids?
Right. Well, there's also the challenge of can you handle something with grace, right? So that's what I saw with when you look at that one MTV Music Awards where you could see that they were taking parts of Duncan's ritual and putting it in every single performance, and then at the end you had this kind of test of Taylor Swift as it turns out she's really the one being initiated at this awards ceremony, right? And Kanye comes up and he's like, Beyonce had the best video, and then she just handled it gracefully. Like he was kind of testing
what's
her.
the Duncan ritual connection to that? This is new to me. I know what you're talking about because of the Kanye event.
Well, because all the performances, like you can see, Pink's was really obvious because she had one breast with the checkered and then her heart showing. You have like the way that you'd have your shirt open, and she's got one leg. It's like, and then she gets raised up into the air with the blindfold, so you can see the part of Duncan's ritual there. But then Lady Gaga was like playing Hiram Abiff, so to speak, or some androgynous version of Hiram Abiff, because they have the two pillars, and she gets sacrificed in the middle of them. She's like bleeding from her stomach, and it was like you could take every performance of that particular MTV Music Awards and see some of them were a bit of a stretch. You can see the elements of it.
He got hit in the head.
Right, but no, I know, but I'm saying it's like these kind of vague.
I get it. It's like
artistic. We're taking the liberty. We're being pretty direct, but we're not being as direct.
It's like the KFC bowl where they just throw like chicken and macaroni and mashed potatoes and just whip it around, and they're like, look, it's chicken.
Yeah, but then at the end, it was like that felt like that was beyond what's written in the book. There was now here's the test. How is the initiate going to handle it? And it was also the big reveal of who the initiate is. Because there's a lot of performers, It's
crazy that those two people, Kanye West and Taylor Swift, if you ignore the last couple of years with Kanye, end up being like two of the most financially successful moguls across the world. The third one might be like P. Diddy, which is weird. Now that out of the three of them, it's really Taylor Swift that won.
Right. And wouldn't the kicker be that Kanye doesn't know that he's been directed? You watch a Darren Brown presentation and the way he uses NLP with the crowd and all of that award ceremony felt like they were doing that to Kanye and he didn't even know it. They got him to the point where he's now going to do this thing. That would make it real magic. You know what I mean? Or not real magic, but like that advanced neurolinguistic type of magic that Darren Brown does to get him to the point now he's playing out this thing. Like if that whole award ceremony, and it's not the only time, but it's very pronounced, it feels like a Darren Brown performance, and he was the mark, he was the Carney mark,
Dude, what was the thing else with Kanye West and the Sandy Hook kids? But you know what? Hold on. We promised Linus that he would be able to eat at some point. And it's like 2 hours deep, so I want to be able to wrap this up. But Linus, you're here with us. Is there anything else you wanted to get to bring up while you're here? We'll bring you back again pretty sooner than later this time, but just wanted to give you the opportunity to not pass out, because you've been here for a while, and I love you for that, bro. Thank you. Such a kind.
Thanks. Thanks for the. I just had to take a phone call there for a second, but hammering out my plans for the evening, including dinner plans.
Fair enough.
Maybe I can't think of the right coincidence right now because I'm hungry or something. I don't know.
See, again, my fault. I feel bad. You never want to make a Canadian feel too polite. It's wrong.
You're a good sport. So this was last minute, by the way, people. We're it took a half an hour for us to wrangle the right person in here. We asked two people. and you were one of them. And
The other was
you
Barabbas.
were also the first. So there was like one attempt that didn't go there. But yeah, we're glad you could make it.
Nice.
And thanks for being here for the full 2 hours, man.
Hey, yeah, I'm happy to be here. This was fun. Nothing's leaping to mind about like the sync things that were on my mind, at least yesterday. I mentioned them. So yeah, I think I'm pretty good.
That's based. All right, I want to get Linus back here. We're going to do an MK Canada Renaissance pretty soon, just so we can talk about Canada. Let's wax on hard. I want to show the fourth way. I put this meme up. Excuse me, Jesus, you're in the way. Fuck you, I am the way, bro. Yeah, I think that's where we're at. And then, yeah, just remind people, Ebionites are cool too, but go to the communities in X. You can find the Xirtus group in X, kind of the continuity of the Advanced Philosophy Memes group we're building up. It's kind of fun here. It's kind of casual. You can post whatever you want. Terrorist has been putting some funny memes up. You know, this is the way most white supremacist Nazis are going to look in 20 years, is what he was saying earlier. I like it. There's a lot of cool things in this group. It's a lot less censored than the Facebook group ever was, which is sweet. Right. And then, yeah, let me also share some of your links for where people can find your content. I know Paranoid American, MK Ultra. Linus, do you have any like social media stuff that you want to share with us?
Well, I mean, I would say, yeah, I mean, just check out my Twitter at Linus Minimax. Like, without getting into I don't really want to like open up the can of worms right now about what I'm thinking about it or whatever. But I was very amused recently when Trump shared or reposted a.
Did they really shut him down? That's ironic. Come on.
Yeah. Thank you.
How do you know he said something cool? That's how you know. That's straight up how. Come on, Google. We can't wait for that antitrust case, can we, folks? Antitrust. Come on, Department of Justice. Come on, SEC. Take YouTube away from these child molesters and give them to some other company. I am tired of this.
Yep.
Really? Wow. Okay, let's just pretend like that's not what's going on. Cool. All right. Wow.
You might as well have said Voldemort or something, you know? It's just
Are you kidding me?
Guys, I just found out the real ineffable name of God. It's
all right. You know what? I'm gonna do my best. For the few of you that are already on the watch index, because there's no watch list anymore, there's just a watch index with a number of asterisks next to your name. Check out Linus Minimax. He's one of our Oh my god, they really did shut him down.
Took him out.
Dude, all right. But like you all know, if someone does that, that means that you want to follow them. If you're part of our group, you're a heretic and you want to follow them.
Whatever it is, Linus, if you're able to listen right now, if you're not going to jump right back in, I think maybe your next tweet should be an emphasis on whatever it is that you were trying to say here that you got shut down with, you know.
Seriously. I'm going to put you into a space. Are you back?
Yeah.
Are you back?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Well, geez, my computer totally froze. I said I wasn't going to open the can of worms, and I meant it. But so all I'll say is, I think that I know why Trump specifically chose this picture of himself to comment on that thing. So,
oh my god,
because of Jupiter and Saturn fingers, or what?
The V for victory is the two-headed eagle.
Yeah,
victory. Crowley and Churchill are a two-headed eagle.
Right. Okay.
We got to go hard on that. Let's do MK Canada in another space. Linus, I appreciate you. Everyone, make sure you're following Linus right here. Let's definitely all put Linus into the front of our minds and imaginations. Thank you again for taking the time to be through here. And I want to take more time and look at psychopathology of everyday life so that I can ask you some more questions now that you've been reading this book. This is one I haven't pushed through yet. So I'll make sure that we do it. I refuse to generate a random number on the grounds that it may incriminate me. That piques my interest pretty hard, I gotta say. Also, as a fellow heretic, just want to remind people that the definition of heretic is the ability to choose. Hereticos is the ability to choose. We often connect it with blasphemy, which is to not take something serious enough. And I think that's ironically the opposite of what kind of heretics we are. We take things very seriously around here. So thank you for having the capacity to make your own decisions, to think for yourself. Yeah, we'll be back. I'm gonna click on my turn on all notifications button, and then let me just also click on Paranoid American, paranoidamerican.com, and Paranoid America is his X page as well. Make sure you're following Paranoid America. Oh my God, bro. You really pushed past me on my I don't really rage hard enough on Twitter, apparently. You're doing good. But everyone, make sure you're following Paranoid America. He's streaming here live right now. He talks about
things.
Free America. Yeah, stuff and things. And you can definitely go to paranoidamerican.com where you can find his comic books. He's working on the Golden Bough comic book with David Plate.
Go to kubrickcomic.com and it'll bring you right to a place where you can sign up so that as soon as this launches or the campaign launches, you'll be able to get notified immediately. And we'll probably even give you like a special little code so you get like a Synctank trading card sticker or something.
Pretty sweet. So yeah, love you, Thomas. Thank you for being here. Thank you for working together with us on this amazing show. And David Charles Plate, the ineffable, the inerrant, the perfection, the one true MK Ultrasound 723, making the greatest sync flicks you've ever seen. This is right. If you go click on highlights, you can see some of them yourself. The man takes movies and music and he puts them together and he shows how they either were planned on being some sort of a conspiracy of perfect synchronicity, or better yet, often it's just like the power of nature that some of these things work together so perfectly that you would think wouldn't. A lot of these, though, for sure, they must know what they're doing. I think that's kind of what we've realized, is that we're not the only ones who know about synchromysticism. And, hey, but maybe we're some of the few, the proud, the brave that know the most. And I don't know if I want to be that naive. So whatever you do, make sure you follow David Charles Plate and you go to syncbook.com. The syncbook.com will take you right to his full list of content. I'm trying to load the page, but I'll try harder. The syncbook.com. Maybe it's a little. It's slow loading today.
It's down right now. Yeah,
slow loading today. But when you do, you'll find your way to like David's artwork as well. Oh, legendary burrito! Thank you for being here. And then if you haven't already, you can go to Xirtus.com. I try not to push too hard on myself, but if you do go to Xirtus.com, you can support us directly, and the more you support us, the better. And you can also when you set up. I'm just say you're going to send $250 because, like, I like to imagine it. You can click on what it is that you want us to. Send a little comment with it. Like $10 in or whatever. We'll definitely talk about what it is you want us to talk about. That's part of the deal with the show. So, thank you for being here. We'll see you next week, and stay tuned because we're going to do that David Icke thing. It's going to be sweet. Peace.